All right, boys and girls, part of this week we are going to talk about complex sentences. And a complex sentence is formed when we combine an independent clause and one or more dependent clauses. And I know you're sitting there probably thinking to yourself, what in the world is Mrs. Dixon talking about? So I want you to just think for a minute. I want you to actually all turn to Reader's Notebook, page 132. And I want you to think back when we're talking about a sentence. And a sentence, we know, is a complete thought, right? It has to have a subject and a verb. It has to be a complete thought. We can't just say the cat, or we can't just say ran down the street. We can say the cat ran down the street because that would be a complete thought. That would be a complete sentence, a complete thought. So when we are talking about a complex sentence, that's formed when we combine an independent clause and one or more dependent clauses. So an independent clause, boys and girls, is a simple sentence and it tells a complete thought. It has a subject, it has a verb. For example, we went sailing. That would be an independent clause. It is a simple sentence. It tells us a complete thought. It has a subject, it has a verb. We is the subject. We went sailing. It has a complete thought there. It's got the subject, it has the verb. That is what we call an independent clause. Now, a dependent clause has a subject and a verb, but does not tell a complete thought. Although the boat needed a repair. That does not tell us a complete thought. Although the boat needed a repair. Well, what about it? Yeah, it has a subject. It has a verb. But it doesn't tell us a complete thought. But when we add those two together, that is when we say, oh, that's a complex sentence. Because we're saying, although the boat needed a repair, we went sailing. Now, we added that independent clause and the dependent clause, and that gives us a complex sentence. So when we're doing these, I want you to use your thinking question. Which part of the sentence tells a complete thought and which part cannot stand alone? And this can be really confusing. So I want to do these with you. And I also put a link on your website and on your to-do list for the Khan Academy that has these on there. It is very important that you go on there and do those. Now, looking at these directions on your book on page 132, write complex if the sentence has an independent clause and one or more dependent clauses. Write dependent clause if the sentence does not tell a complete thought. All right, so let's look at each one. And I'm going to give you a few minutes and we'll come back and check. When the boat's rope broke, the boys worked quickly to fix it. When the boat's rope broke, the boys worked quickly to fix it. Do we write complex? Does that have an independent clause and one or more dependent clauses? Or do we write dependent clause because it does not tell a complete thought? When the boat's rope broke, the boys worked quickly to fix it. I think that has a complete thought. So you should have written complex. Number 2, Jen retied the ropes since she was good with knots. Is that a complete thought? Is that a complex sentence? Does it have an independent clause and one or more dependent clauses? If so, it is complex. It has a complete thought. If it does not have a complete thought, it is dependent clause. Jen retied the ropes since she was good with knots. Yes, you are correct. That does have a complete thought, so it is complex. Number 3, while the captain carefully watched her. Does that have a complete thought? Does it have an independent clause and 2 or more dependent clauses? No, it does not. It is not a complete thought. So there we are going to write dependent clause. For number 4, everyone relaxed when they arrived at the dock. Is that a sentence that has an independent clause and 1 or more dependent clauses? Does it have a complete thought? Or is it a sentence that does not tell a complete thought? Everyone relaxed when they arrived at the dock. Yes, that is a complete thought. So you would write complex for number 4. Again, boys and girls, you're going to ask yourself for the thinking question. Which part of the sentence tells a complete thought and which part cannot stand alone? So where we wrote complex, for number 1, the boys worked quickly to fix it. That would be our complete thought. When the boat's rope broke, that cannot stand alone. For number 2, Jen retied the ropes since she was good with knots. Well, Jen retied the ropes. That is our complete thought. And number 4, everyone relaxed when they arrived at the dock. Everyone relaxed. That's our complete thought. So you want to ask yourself that thinking question. Which part of the sentence tells a complete thought? Which part cannot stand alone? And it's okay to think back to these rules about the independent clause and the dependent clause, which brings you to what a complex sentence is. And we will go over this again this week, but I wanted to go over this with you today so you are not confused. But I highly, highly recommend that you go over this and that you look at the Khan Academy and you really, really work through this to make sure that you understand. And if you have any questions, you ask me. Okay? and we'll talk more about it. Thank you.